Episode 240, Why No Dig Gardening. This is the Change Underground for the week ending 14th of December 2020, John Moore reporting. Hello and welcome to this presentation, Why No Dig Gardening. It's presented by the Change Underground Academy. Hi, I'm John, a no-dig grower, teacher and advocate. I run a small holding. I podcast every week with the podcast Change Underground, and I'm a published author. And currently my position is course coordinator at the Change Underground Academy. So in our talk today, we'll be covering what is no-dig gardening, why it matters, what the three principles are, and then what we can do afterwards. We can't go across the whole of the topic today, but we will go fairly deeply into why no-dig matters. So what is no-dig gardening? Well, it's a system that mimics nature, basically, to grow food fit for human consumption. It's fairly basic stuff, but a lot of the food we have out there now is so forced with chemical growing, it has no flavour and very little nutritional value. It's that full of water. So this is a step back in the right direction. And so we do the whole no-dig thing by looking at nature and what nature actually does. It's called biomimicry. We work on the assumption that we won't have all the answers and that nature will continually teach us. So there's three principles in practice: no digging, no weeding, and multi-species planting. So, and that leads to healthy soil, healthy food, and healthy people. Back in 2017, it was suggested that we could be back down to our last 60 harvests of topsoil. There's been so much chemicals added to the topsoil and so much ploughing and whatnot done since that time, as tractors have gotten bigger and easier to use, that it's basically destroying the life in the soil. And unless people are covering the soil, it's going to blow away or wash away or get covered in weeds. So you go to no-tillfarmer.com, there's an interesting article there on the UN report on the last 60 harvests. It's a bit disappointing and somewhat depressing if you don't realise there's another way to it. So chemical farming destroys soil biology. That's the M from our good friends at Monsanto. Chemical farming destroys soil biology, and the poster boy for chemical farming is, of course, Monsanto, which is what that M's for. Also involves a lot of genetic modification to change things. The other cause of soil loss is deforestation. So you remove the tree cover, and of course the soil is just going to wash away unless you can get something growing on it very quickly. Now, a warming planet makes all this worse. With the bare soil, the heat's going to be hotter, and the bare soil actually heats up more quickly than covered soil and kills off biology deeper down. Now, every time you kill off biology by having bare soil or turning the soil, we're releasing CO2 into the atmosphere, which then feeds back into the warming planet. So it's a non-virtuous cycle. But a better way is needed now. And farmers are doing their bits. You can see here there's a cover crop, and in between they've planted some sort of cereal, probably wheat. And then next season, as the cover crop dies off, they'll plant more wheat or a different cereal. And so the soil is continually covered, as you can see there. Oops, one too many. So we can help too. Farmers are doing the right thing, but there's a lot more that can be done in suburbia. Removing lawns would be a good place to start because they're just another monocrop. So if we start small, I advocate probably a 1 square metre garden to start with if you're new to it. That's about 10 square feet for those in the US. Grow your own, share it with your family and friends. And I have a quote here from Bill Mollison, one of the co-founders of permaculture. If only 10% of us move from consumption to production, there'll be enough for everyone, which is an amazing thought. And we don't need to get that many people into this to actually change the world for the better. So what can we do now? Something has to change to protect our food supply. And of course, my solution to that is grow your own. And otherwise you wouldn't be here, I guess, if you weren't interested yourself. You can see there I'm holding perhaps the world's most delicious carrots, the ones that you've grown yourself. You'll notice also that there's sunflowers. That's a dwarf variety because we get a lot of wind where this is growing, and they're not going to get knocked over if they're short. But it's important to have more than one species growing in one spot. So the three principles again are no digging, no weeding, and multiple species. And you can see here on this little garden I did a few years ago now that there's the corn growing in the background. We've got zucchini. There's also mizuna in the middle there that you can't see. We've got some purple potted beans, king purples they are, growing up on the side of the carport there. And you'll notice that there's mulch over the soil to keep it covered. So the three principles do require a mindset change, particularly the no digging and no weeding bit, because it flies in the face of about 10,000 years of old world farming and gardening. After all, one of the earliest archaeological signs of domestication of plants is the digging stick. And so we've travelled from the digging stick to the massive tractors I was talking about before. But there's always a but, and this one's a big but. Even though we can grow food with chemicals, power implements and herbicides, the food quality suffers, and so do you. We don't notice because the gradual decline has been gradual. But compared to food that was grown in the Second World War, the nutrient levels are much lower. There's a piece by Dr. Christine Jones that I've got on the website you can go and have a look at that explains what a change there's been, and it's quite terrifying. So no weeding, this is another one that throws people. And if we look at these two pictures and ask the question, which one's calling the weeds? So the Change Underground system relies more on the top picture, not the bottom. And nature just abhors a vacuum, as we know, and bare soil is basically the biological equivalent of a vacuum. It's like when the glaciers retreated and bare soil was left. Most of the weeds we get in these sorts of systems were the plants that first colonised when the glaciers retreated to get some cover on the soil. It's a self-perpetuating system. So you can see here multiple species, and the different species tend to talk to each other underground. We were discovering this in the last sort of 10 years, I guess, the interaction between mycelia and bacteria and soil roots and plant roots in the soil. And we've always known to some degree that more than one species makes each other safer. We think it's because the pheromones they give off attract and repel different pests and pest predators. So if we think of the garden as a 3D space and we need to fill all three layers across the dimensions, this is a garden plan I used at work where I run a small horticulture program in the disability sector. But you can see we've got rocket and cress, and these were baby cabbages in there, a little few marigolds in each corner. That was squash in there. I think zucchini, tomatoes, beans, all designed to be next to each other as companions, but also designed to completely cover the ground area underneath. And we'll go and have a look at the next one. So basically it's a form of regenerative gardening. This is another variation on that one I showed you earlier after the corn had come out and other things were planted, and you can see that there's plenty of mulch and whatnot on there. So biomimicry, following the three principles, means we grow more like nature, and that means we're growing topsoil, soil that supports life and grows real food. And in the process, we're growing food that is fit for human consumption. And imagine food that tastes like it used to when we were much, much younger. And tomatoes are the poster boy for these sorts of things. that are now sort of red and tasteless, but quite firm, so they're good to transport. But a tomato that survives for a couple of days is so full of flavour and can be grown in your own space. And it doesn't matter then that it's not being transported for 10,000 kilometres. And you can grow this way too. Simple, easy to follow video lessons supported by checklists and a monthly Ask Me Anything meeting and 12 months of access to all the material over at the Change Underground Academy. And you can grow lots of your own food. I mean, you can also add in chooks or chickens, if you prefer that word. People keep rabbits or ducks. I prefer ducks myself. And it improves your diet as well, because if you've grown something, you're going to eat it. Compared to a bag of mouldy lettuce that you brought home from the supermarket and sat in the back of the fridge for a week, fresh leaves picked off the outside of your lettuce from your own garden as the plant continues to grow and feed you. I've had lettuce go for a whole summer without any dramas, just by picking the outside leaves when they were ready. Nothing tastes like the veggies you've grown yourself, so therefore you're more likely to eat them. And if you're more likely to eat them, you're more likely to get a much healthier diet. But can you start a no-dig garden, I hear you ask? Well, yes, you can, obviously. That's why we're here. So all you need to taste your fresh veggies on your own plate is available at the Change Underground Academy over at worldorganicnews.com. And at that address, you'll get the best price that's available at this point in time. So, and the course comes with 6 Get Me Started modules, so building the garden, which is, of course, the interesting and fun part, but also the other stuff, tools. Comes with all the modules you'll need to get me started, and that's building the garden, the tools you'll need, which are very minimal. pH explained because while we're building over the top of the soil, eventually the pH underneath comes to balance off what we've grown on top. You also learn about hot composting, the nature of the 3 different sorts of seed types we can use, and easy gardening planning. And that's important in a lot of ways, but you don't have to get too carried away with the planning unless, of course, you've got a much bigger plot. But it's important to remember that we always have to keep the soil covered. And I'm adding new modules each month, so they're available for that whole 12 months while you're working your way through it and working your way through the gardening year. And don't forget the Ask Me Anything Zoom meetings so we can always keep on top of stuff. So come and join the community at the Change Underground Academy over at worldorganicnews.com and plant your seeds today.